Roger Federer just dropped a bombshell that nobody saw coming, and it's about Alex Eala. The tennis great's social media was engulfed in shockwaves from revelations, which split fans and split the internet. What did he say? And why are people discussing the young Filipino celebrity in a way that has never been done before? This isn't just another endorsement or casual comment. This is something deeper, something that changes how we see one of tennis's rising talents. Federer went there even though no one anticipated him. The world now demands explanations. It happened at a press conference in Basel. The man who hardly ever gets involved in controversy, Roger Federer, was questioned about the future of women's tennis. After grinning and pausing, he said something that would make headlines for days. He made reference to Alex Eala, but not in the way you might anticipate, that is, not with the customary courteous commendation reserved for young talents. His tone changed. His voice carried anxiety, maybe even disappointment. Alex Eala has extraordinary talent, Federer said. But I wonder if she's really playing her own game anymore. The room went quiet. Journalists looked at one another. What was he trying to say? Federer continued, choosing his words carefully but deliberately. He talked about the pressures young players face, the sponsorship machines that surround them, the federations that see them as investments rather than individuals. The line that will spark the internet was then uttered by him. These players can occasionally be controlled by those who are meant to protect them. And I'm concerned about what I've heard about Alex's predicament. He didn't explain. He didn't have to. It was evident what was implied. Behind the scenes in Alex Eala's career, something was going on. Something the general public was unaware of. Despite his reputation for avoiding drama, Roger Federer felt obliged to address this issue. The damage, or the truth, depending on who you ask, was already apparent when the press conference ended. The video went viral in a matter of hours, and Twitter erupted. There were speculative Reddit posts. Every word Federer said was subjected to analysis by YouTube channels. Everyone had the same question, which was straightforward but complex. What is Alex Eala's dark secret? This was the last kind of attention a young player who was still attempting to make a name for herself on the WTA Tour deserved. However, this was a story too big to ignore for the tennis community. Everyone wanted to know what was behind the door that Federer had opened. However, we must go back to the beginning of Alex Eala's story in order to comprehend why Federer's remarks struck so deeply. Alex Eala is not your typical tennis player. She is the pride of the Philippines, a national hero, and the first Filipino to win a Grand Slam championship, although in her junior year. She achieved more than simply a personal victory in the 2022 U.S. Open girls singles competition. It was a moment of collective joy for an entire country that had waited decades for a tennis star to call their own. Eala, who was born in 2005, was a gifted child from birth. Her parents made a choice that would affect her entire life after seeing her talent at a young age. At just 11 years old, she was sent to Spain to train at the Rafa Nadal Academy. 11. Most kids that age are figuring out middle school. Alex was already across the world grinding on clay courts away from her family, living the life of a professional athlete before she even hit puberty. The academy refined her skills. She rose in the ranks, won junior championships, and came to represent Filipino tennis. But there was a cost. Every interview, press conference held after the game, and sponsorship agreement carried the burden of anticipation. She wasn't merely entertaining herself. She was playing for an entire nation. And that kind of pressure, it changes you. Eala had already spent more time in the spotlight by the time she went pro than most athletes do in their whole careers. She had partnerships with well-known brands. A federation made significant investments in her achievements. She had coaches, managers, agents, all with their own agendas. Her life had been taken from her. It was a carefully managed brand. Externally, it appeared flawless. A rising young, gifted, and marketable star. However, insiders muttered, they always do. Rumors circulated that she was no longer in charge of making career decisions, that there were conflicts with her team, and that her schedule was dictated by sponsorship obligations. Subsequently, Federer expressed what many had been considering but were afraid to voice. Alex Eala, the golden girl of Philippine tennis, might not be as free as everyone thought. What precisely was known by Federer, then? What made him decide to speak? Federer did not provide names. He didn't point fingers. However, it was impossible to ignore the picture his comments painted. Federer was referring to the enormous influence that different parties had on Alice's career, according to people familiar with the matter. This went beyond career guidance or coaching advice. This was about a young player who had little freedom of choice due to a complex web of financial obligations, federation expectations, and sponsorship duties. Here's what we know. There were conditions attached to the contracts Alice signed with big sponsors early in her career. Appearance requirements, social media obligations, tournament schedules dictated not by what was best for her development, but by what maximized brand visibility. She was a very valuable product. The federation is another. The Philippine Tennis Association had invested significantly in Alice's career. They funded her training. They helped fund her trip. However, there are aspirations for investment. She wasn't just representing herself on court. She was arguing for a whole sports program that depended on her success to be funded. There was a lot of pressure. And the coaching situation that raised eyebrows, too. Multiple coaching changes in a short period. Each time the official story was about finding the right fit, but those close to the situation suggested something else. Long-lived coaches were those who resisted the schedule and put Eala's long-term growth ahead of immediate gains. The message was clear. Get replaced or fall into line. Federer had seen this before. Under comparable circumstances, he had seen young talents burn out. He'd seen promising careers derailed, not by lack of skill, but by lack of agency. And when he looked at Eala's situation, he saw warning signs. So he spoke up. Speaking up, however, had repercussions. What was going on with Alex Eala was no longer the only question. It concerned whether Federer had the right to reveal it, whether his worries were sincere, or if he had simply made a young player's life much more difficult. There were also a lot of opinions on the internet. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Filipino fans, fiercely protective of their tennis star, flooded social media with defenses of Eala. They accused Federer of overstepping, of speaking about a situation he didn't fully understand, of using his platform to create controversy where there was none. Roger Federer must remain in his own territory. Alex Eala is doing just fine, said a widely shared tweet. We don't need a former athlete attempting to stir things up. Others, though, had a different view. Tennis analysts pointed out that Federer rarely speaks without reason. If he was worried enough to make a public statement, it probably had some truth to it. Similar cases were cited. Young athletes who appeared destined for success only to burn out due to outside pressure. Reddit threads dissected every aspect of Eala's career. Her coaching changes, her tournament schedule, and her sponsorship agreements all showed trends that were difficult to ignore. According to the data, a player might be pushed too hard in an effort to achieve outcomes that would please everyone but the person holding the racket. Women's tennis forums debated the broader implications. It was more than just Eala. It was about a system that treats young female athletes as commodities, that prioritizes marketability over mental health, that measures success in sponsorship dollars rather than personal growth. Some fans called for transparency. They were interested in speaking with Eala directly. Was she happy? Did she feel in charge of her professional life? Or was Federer right to be worried? However, Eala said nothing. No statement, no social media post, nothing. And that silence, it spoke volumes. The debate had developed a life of its own. What started as a casual comment from Federer had become a full-blown debate about power, control, and the hidden costs of being a young star in professional tennis. This wasn't just about one player anymore. This applied to the system as a whole. Alex Eala's story became a mirror. It revealed unsettling realities about the way the tennis industry handles its rising stars, particularly young women, the demands placed on them to perform, the sponsorship commitments, and the federations that view players more as national resources than as unique people with goals and boundaries. Think about it. How many young girls with big dreams enter the world of professional tennis only to burn out before turning 25? How many bright careers end because the system fails them rather than because of injuries or a lack of talent? There has long been a mental health crisis in women's tennis. Gamers like Simona Halep and Naomi Osaka have been candid about the toll that ongoing pressure takes. But Eala's situation highlighted something else, the lack of autonomy. How much of your career is truly yours when you're managed by agencies, sponsored by international businesses, and supported by federations before you're even old enough to cast a ballot. Who's making the decisions? Furthermore, who gains when you succeed or fail? Federer's comment forced these questions into the open. It made people uncomfortable because the answer isn't simple. Yes, support systems are necessary. Young athletes require support, mentoring, and coaching. However, when does support turn into control? When does guidance become exploitation? The tennis world didn't have good answers, and that was the problem. Despite its advancements, women's tennis still has issues with how it handles its youthful talent. The sport celebrates them, profits from them, but rarely protects them. It wasn't just Aya's story. That was merely the most recent instance of a recurring pattern. And until the system changes, there will be more Alex Ealas. More young players caught between their dreams and everyone else's expectations. What does this mean for us and for Alex Eala, then? In the days following Federer's comment, the tennis world waited for a response, for clarification, for anything that would make sense of what had just happened. However, the silence persisted. Federer didn't walk back his words. He also didn't go into detail. He'd said what he needed to say, and he let it stand. He was admired by some for it. He was criticized by others for dropping a bomb and then leaving. In the meantime, Alex Eala kept up her routine. She showed up to her next tournament. She played. She smiled for the cameras. But those who looked closely saw something different. A level of caution that wasn't previously present. A careful distance in her interviews. Was she angry at Federer? Thankful? Trapped? Nobody knew. Perhaps that was the intention. Maybe the fact that we couldn't tell was evidence of exactly what Federer was warning about. A young athlete who was so well managed and in control that even her feelings had to be carefully controlled. The Philippine Tennis Association released a brief statement defending their support of Eala and emphasizing their commitment to her development. It was professional. It was vague. It answered nothing. Sponsors stayed quiet. Coaches stayed quiet. Everyone resumed their regular business. But something had shifted. The conversation had started. People were paying attention now, not just to Alex Eala's results, but to her well-being. Not just to her wins, but to whether she was actually okay. And maybe that's what Federer wanted all along. Not to destroy her career or create scandal, but to make people look closer, to question the system, to care about the person, not just the player. We might never be able to fully understand Alex Eala's career. The reality is, we may never know if Federer was right to speak up or if he overstepped. However, this is known. Tennis needs its young players, so the discussion is important. But they must be whole. It needs them healthy. It needs them to have careers that last, not just careers that burn bright and fast. Alex Eala is talented enough to be great. The question is whether the system will let her be. Roger Federer's words opened a door that tennis didn't know it needed opened. Alex Eala's story expanded beyond a single player. It became a reflection of how the sport treats its rising stars, especially young women carrying the hopes of entire nations. Whether you think Federer was right to speak up or believe he crossed a line, one thing is undeniable. This conversation is far from over. The real question isn't just what happens to Alex Eala next. It's what happens to every young player navigating the impossible balance between dreams and expectations, between support and control. Because if we don't address it now, we'll be having the same conversation about another talented teenager in a few years. How do you feel? Was Federer out of line, or did he just say what everyone else was thinking? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Click the subscribe button and enable notifications if you want to be informed about the most significant stories and disputes affecting women's tennis. There is still more to come in this story, and you won't want to miss it. We appreciate your viewing and hope to see you in the future.